I never thought my passion for cosplay would lead me here, trapped in this nightmare of plastic and porcelain. But let me start from the beginning, before my world shattered into 1,000 reflections of horror. My name is Marin Kitagawa, and I used to be just another girl with big dreams of cosplay stardom. Little did I know that my talent would catch the eye of a monster wearing human skin. It all began with an email. An invitation from a mysterious collector, promising exposure and opportunities beyond my wildest imagination. The message was cryptic, hinting at a private photo shoot in a secluded mansion. My heart raced with excitement, drowning out the whispers of caution in the back of my mind. As I approached the mansion, its looming silhouette against the blood-red sunset sent a chill down my spine. Gothic spires pierced the sky like accusing fingers, and gargoyles leered from every corner, their stone eyes seeming to follow my every move. The grounds were overgrown, thorny vines creeping up the weathered walls like grasping hands. I hesitated at the ornate front door, my finger hovering over the ancient brass knocker shaped like a screaming face. Before I could make contact, the door creaked open on its own, revealing a dimly lit foyer. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of dust and something sickeningly sweet. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. "I'm here for the photo shoot." Silence answered me, broken only by the soft ticking of an unseen clock. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I noticed the walls were lined with mirrors of all shapes and sizes. My reflection stared back at me from 100 different angles, each one slightly distorted, as if I was looking at a funhouse version of myself. I took a tentative step forward, and the floorboard creaked beneath my feet. The sound seemed to trigger something in the house. Suddenly, lights flickered to life, illuminating a path deeper into the mansion. With each step, I felt like I was descending into madness. The corridor led me to a vast room that took my breath away, and not in a good way. Mannequins, hundreds of them arranged in grotesque tableaus. Some were dressed in elaborate costumes, while others stood naked, their blank faces turned towards me in silent judgment. Their eyes, glassy and lifeless, seemed to follow me as I moved through the room. "Welcome, Miss Kitagawa," a voice suddenly purred from behind me. I whirled around, my heart pounding in my chest. There stood a man, tall and gaunt, with skin so pale it was almost translucent. His eyes were sunken, ringed with dark circles, and his smile was too wide, revealing teeth that seemed just a bit too sharp. "I'm so pleased you could join us," he said, extending a hand that looked more like a spider than human flesh. "I am the collector, and this is my gallery of living art." I shook his hand, fighting the urge to recoil at his cold, clammy touch. "Thank you for inviting me," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Your collection is impressive." The collector's smile widened impossibly further. "Oh, my dear, you haven't seen anything yet. Come, let me show you where the magic happens." He led me deeper into the mansion, past rooms filled with more mannequins, each more disturbing than the last. Some seemed to be made of wax, their features melting and reforming as we passed. Others were constructed from bits and pieces, a patchwork of different body parts sewn together in nightmarish combinations. We finally arrived at what appeared to be a studio. Cameras and lights were set up, facing a backdrop of mirrors. But these weren't ordinary mirrors. As I looked into them, I saw my reflection move independently, smiling and waving at me even as I stood stock still. What is this?" I asked, unable to tear my eyes away from the impossible reflections. The collector chuckled, a sound like bones rattling. "This, my dear Marin, is where I create perfection, where I turn fleeting beauty into eternal art." As he spoke, I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. The mannequins we had passed were no longer static. They were coming to life, their joints creaking as they lurched towards us. "You see," the collector continued, seemingly oblivious to my growing horror, "I've always been fascinated by the art of cosplay, the transformation, the becoming someone else. But why stop at mere costumes when one can become the character entirely?" I backed away, my eyes darting between the approaching mannequins and the collector's maniacal grin. "What are you talking about?" "My process is quite simple, really," he said, advancing on me as I retreated. "I capture the essence of a person, their soul, if you will, and transfer it into one of my creations. The result is a perfect, unchanging representation of beauty. And you, my dear Marin, will be my masterpiece." Terror gripped me as I realized the full extent of his madness. These weren't just mannequins. They were people, trapped in artificial bodies, and he intended to do the same to me. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my ears. The mansion had become a nightmarish funhouse, corridors twisting and turning in impossible ways. Mirrors lined every surface, my panicked reflection multiplied infinitely. Behind me, I could hear the collector's laughter and the relentless shuffle of the mannequins in pursuit. Their plastic hands grasped at me, cold fingers brushing against my skin as I narrowly escaped their clutches. I burst into a room filled with costumes, hoping to lose my pursuers in the maze of fabric and sequins. As I ducked behind a rack of elaborate gowns, I caught sight of myself in yet another mirror. For a moment, I thought I saw my reflection wink at me. "This can't be happening," I whispered to myself, trying to catch my breath. "This has to be a dream." But the pain in my lungs and the terror coursing through my veins were all too real. I could hear the mannequins getting closer, their joints creaking like old doors as they searched for me. Suddenly, a hand clamped over my mouth. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was pulled backward, through what felt like a curtain of ice water, and found myself in a hidden passage behind the mirror. "Shh," a voice hissed in my ear. "If you want to live, follow me." I turned to see a young woman, her face hauntingly familiar. It took me a moment to realize why. She looked exactly like one of the cosplay characters I had portrayed in the past. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I'm you," she replied, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Or rather, I'm what you could become if we don't get out of here." She explained quickly as we moved through the hidden passages. She had been one of the collector's victims, her soul trapped in a mannequin body modeled after my cosplay. But something had gone wrong with the process, leaving her with a fragment of free will. "He's been perfecting his technique," she said, guiding me through the labyrinthine corridors. "Each victim gets closer to his ideal of perfection. You're meant to be his crowning achievement." We emerged into a vast chamber, filled with bubbling vats of a viscous, pearlescent liquid. The air was thick with chemical fumes that made my head spin. "This is where he performs the transfer," my doppelganger explained. "We need to destroy it." But before we could act, the collector's voice boomed through the chamber. "Ah, I see you've met one of my less successful attempts," he said, stepping out of the shadows. "No matter. It's time for the final performance, Marin." Mannequins poured into the room from every entrance, their blank faces somehow managing to convey hunger and anticipation. I was cornered, with nowhere left to run. The collector approached, a syringe filled with glowing liquid in his hand. "Don't fight it, my dear. Embrace eternity." In that moment, something snapped inside me. I was Marin Kitagawa, cosplayer extraordinaire, and I wasn't going to become anyone's living doll. I grabbed a nearby container of chemicals and hurled it at the collector. The liquid splashed across his face and he screamed in agony as his skin began to bubble and melt. In the chaos that followed, I fought my way through the mannequins, their grasping hands tearing at my clothes and hair. My doppelganger and I worked together, toppling vats and smashing equipment. The room quickly filled with noxious fumes and flames. As we ran for the exit, I could hear the collector's anguished cries behind us. "You can't escape," he shrieked. "You're already part of my collection." We raced through the mansion, which was now engulfed in flames. Mirrors shattered in the heat, and mannequins melted into grotesque puddles. Finally, we burst through the front door and out into the cool night air. As we stumbled down the overgrown path, away from the inferno behind us, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We had escaped. We were free. But as we reached the gate, I turned to thank my savior. only to find that she had vanished. Confused, I looked down at my hands and my blood ran cold. My skin had taken on a plastic sheen, smooth and unblemished. I touched my face, feeling the hard, artificial surface beneath my fingers. With dawning horror, I realized the truth. I hadn't escaped at all. The real Marin was still trapped inside the burning mansion, her soul now residing in one of the collector's creations. And I, this perfect artificial version of Marin, was walking away, ready to live her life. As I passed through the gate, leaving the crackling inferno behind, I caught my reflection in a shattered piece of mirror. My plastic lips curled into a perfect, eternal smile. The collector had won after all. His masterpiece was complete. And somewhere, in the depths of that burning mansion, the real Marin Kitagawa screamed silently from behind a mannequin's eyes, forced to watch as her doppelganger walked away into the night, ready to live the life that was once hers. The horror of my situation sank in as I realized that my passion for becoming someone else through cosplay had led to the ultimate, nightmarish transformation. I had become a living doll, a perfect replica trapped in an eternal performance, while my true self was left behind, a silent prisoner in a world of shattered mirrors and melted dreams.